Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another broadcast on our Travel Mall YouTube channel. And today I'm delighted to have people from all around Europe, actually, and we're going to be talking about tours by locals. And this is I'll let the experts talk about it because it'd be stupid of me to try and explain it. So who do we have here? We have Nigel from London, we have Christina from Croatia, we have Gloria from Lisbon, we have Albert from Mallorca, and we have Lydia from the United Kingdom. So let's get a little overview of what Tours by Locals is about. Lydia, maybe you can just give me a 2-minute overview of what Tours by Locals is and what it's trying to achieve.
Yes, of course. Thank you so much for the introduction. So I work with the Tours by Locals team here in the UK. So 2-minute rundown. Tours by Locals is an online platform connecting curious travellers with local guides across the globe. So pretty much every country around the world will have fantastic guides like the ones on the call today, sort of introducing you to local areas, showing you those sort of under the radar hidden gems for places they know like the back of their hands. So every single tour is led by a really experienced guide. The vetting process is really rigorous. So sort of every customer knows that they're having the best of the best. The team is supported by 24/7 customer service. They've got a really, really robust cancellation policy as well. So every customer feels like they're really well taken care of when sort of going to new lands, exploring new places. Each tour is fully bespoke, fully customizable. So the website gives an amazing array of tours that you can book and you can experience, but you can have that sort of one-on-one chat, talk beforehand with the guides to sort of curate your perfect experience. And they can recommend amazing places, you know, those undiscovered markets, those waterfalls that you want to go to, you know, from Asia to Europe, really. So anything that you want to do, it can be discussed and it can be kind of incorporated into the itinerary.
Okay, and how do I get hold of Tours by Locals? Is it something that my travel agent would know about, or is it something I would discover going through Google? How do I find them?
They do work through the trade, but also they have an amazing online presence. So you can have you can call the guides, you can have one-on-one conversations with them beforehand. You can also email them as well.
But how would I find them in the first place? Would that just be through Google search? You know, if I'm going to, say, Lisbon this weekend and I want a tour, do I just put local tours and Tours by Locals will come up and Gloria will pop into my window?
Tours by Locals, go straight to the website. Then they have tours by location, and then also tours by sort of, you know, if you wanted to do foodie tours, you wanted to do cultural tours, they have that all on the website as well. And they have some really lovely content, you know, with blogs, picking up on sort of seasonal tours as well, things to do throughout the year.
Excellent. Okay, Albert, you're from Mallorca. Mallorca has more to offer than just Palma. What would be a typical tour for you? Is it around the island, or would you focus on one particular aspect of the island, like food maybe, or you know, the interior of the island, or do you focus mainly on Palma?
Well, it's funny that you mention it, Graham, because my specialty is Palma indeed. However, it is true there are plenty of things to do around the island. One common tour people demand very much from me is, for instance, the mountain road on the western coast. And if they have at least between 7 or 8 hours to spare, we usually do Valdemosa, the Sóller, the Marina of Sóller comes in a row. And you can cover that area. It's not even half of the mountain range, but it's a very decent amount of ground you can cover. And it's a very good mix-up of old villages that go back to the 16th, 15th century. You see the forest, you see the rocky coast, people are very used to sandy coves. I mean, that's what they mainly look for, but people are not so used to pine trees only 1-2 meters from the sea. It's very shocking with the rocks. It's very dramatic. And that's one of our tours that people demand the most from me.
Excellent. And along that west coast, there's also some nice hostelries, if I remember rightly, where one can stop and maybe sample some of the Mallorcan wine, or
absolutely,
or a cafe con leche, or whatever you might feel
absolutely like. There's plenty of wineries. We have over close to 100 wineries in the island where you can taste wine. In every one of those villages, there are very good cafes or bakeries where you can, in Valdemosa, for instance, where I live, we have a bakery and cafe where you can taste a delicacy that's originally from Valdemosa. It's called the potato bun. And it's exactly what Mallorcans are not original people. We call things as they are. So a potato bun is a bun made of potato, period. And people love it. And yes, of course, there's plenty of opportunities to stop and taste local cuisine.
Excellent. Christina, you're from Split in Croatia. You presumably concentrate on that area, Split itself. What's the most popular tour that you do? What do people ask for?
Well, I think most of the people, they really, when they come to Split, you know, they want to see highlights. And that's Diocletian's Palace for sure. It's something that they are often surprised by, because as I always say, they always expect something like Buckingham Palace, you know, when they go in. And then they see that it's a palace without rooms, chandeliers, you know, beds, things like that. So that's definitely most popular tour, you know, just to go around and do a walking tour of the palace. However, because tour by locals, you know, as it says in the name, it's by locals. So I always like to bring a little bit of that local aspect to even those historical, cultural must-do tours. So there's a tour local style, you know, in Split, and it includes just visiting some of the local coffee places, because, you know, having coffee is kind of a big deal in Croatia. No Starbucks. We don't like to walk around with cups. We order coffee, sit down, try to drink it for a couple of hours if possible. So, you know, that's what I like to bring to people, to see the fish market, one of the oldest here, and how, you know, locals are interacting with locals. So that's definitely one of the most, I would say, sought tours.
And is it something that, you know, the name of the company is Tours by Locals. Is this something that if you had non-locals, they weren't there, is this something you would do yourself, you know, go in and sit around and chat for a couple of hours and people watch maybe with a cup of coffee?
Yeah, I mean, of course, but the thing is, when people come, you know, when you are walking around, it's not just about walking, it's about someone also explaining those little curiosities, why people are there at this time or day, or why this you know, cafe is more popular than the other, or why, you know, people are yelling at the fish market. It's not that they're yelling, it's just the way we kind of, you know, do all this shopping and interacting with one another. So it's not just about the activities, it's about, you know, why certain things are happening and everything. So I think, you know, when I travel, as I'm a passionate traveler, I also like to, at least first day, you know, to get a guide to explain me the gist of it, right? To see how it is. And then afterwards, I can also go back, redo it, you know, enjoy on my own and have even more experiences. But I think that first contact with a local, with a true local, is something that most of the travelers really do cherish.
Excellent. Gloria, you're from Lisbon. My impression of Lisbon, the couple of times I've been there, is it's very hilly, despite what many people think. It has exceptionally good food and wine, and of course, it has port. From every year since about 1250 up till present day, you can buy a bottle of port with that year on it. What's the most common question you get asked when you're doing a tour?
There are several questions that I'm asked. One of it is like, why didn't you get swallowed by Spain when you're just almost all surrounded by it? How come you're independent and speak a different language than Spanish? I'm like, of course, I try not to make my mad, annoyed face to them and then say, well, because we're older than the Spanish and because they were fighting one another when we already were independent and had all our borders defined. That's one of the most common questions. Why Portuguese? Why we managed to be one of the oldest borders in Europe in terms of country. But then there's other things. Lisbon has a river nearby. Everyone asks me, is this the ocean? I said, no, it's the river. How come? It's huge. Well, yeah, it's the estuary of the river. And then I say, have you been to Toledo? Have you been near Madrid? It's the same river. It's the longest of Spain and Portugal together. But there's so many questions about the food as well. You said it very well. The wine, it's the first demarcated region of wines in the world, port wine. So that's something else that started in the 18th century. And it's the first time that we have the DOC designation in the world. It's related to port.
Excellent. And do you ever take people to listen to Fado?
I do.
I have to say Fado is an acquired taste.
You have to go with open spirit. Often I'm asking, can I dance in Fado? No, 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 no. Why do they say silent? We're about to sing Fado. It's more like silent. We're about to sing Fado. It's not silent. It's more like, I'm going to tell you my feelings. I'm going to tell you how I feel. I mean, what's inside me, and please be attentive. So when you listen to Fado, is usually by night, in a place where you can both have a meal and listen to Fado music. Fado comes from fatum, fate, and certain destiny. And so you can imagine what it would be, and this is one of the theories, when sailors would move away, go in their trips, and they didn't know if they would ever be back. So they would be singing their feelings out, always with a guitar, actually 2 guitars, the Portuguese guitar, which is like a bigger mandolin with 12 strings, and the classic guitar. And then you need the Fado singer. And often I'm asking, Graham, but do I have to go to a special school? They have to go to a special school to really sing Fado? No, they just have to be born in the right neighborhood with the right spirit and the right, just spitting out all their feelings. And the guitar is a different story. The Portuguese guitar, I met a guitar player. He said, I'm learning with the master guitar player that played with Amália Rodrigues, the diva of Fado, who passed away in the 90s. And it's like, I've been with him for 10 years and I'm going to absorb all his knowledge until I can, because it's endless, because the singer turns to the musicians and say, now we're going to play this one. And he has to know it.
Fair enough. I mean, I must admit, I've listened to Fado a number of times. And as you say, it has a lot of feeling in it. And it's not the sort of thing you're going to start boogieing to. But it is very, very interesting as a cultural thing. You know, for most people, I don't, you know, when you go to Portugal, I'm not sure they listen to Fado or go to a Fado. You know, I went to sort of like a really nighttime bar with a, you know, hello, what's the secret password? And then you get in. And that's when the Fado started. And it was quite a cultural shock, but I'm glad I've experienced it. Nigel, you're from Ruislip in Essex. Ruislip in Essex is not known for its tours, as far as I'm aware. Do you specialise in another area?
Yes, I mean, I run walking tours in London, in central London, and I also, I guess, major on doing driving tours out of London. So these are travellers who have visited London, maybe have spent a few days travelling around, seeing all the major sites, and then want some time out of London. They want to see a little bit of greenery, a few trees, a bit of grass, maybe some cows and some sheep. So I tend to run private driving tours to places like Stonehenge and Bath and Oxford and the Cotswolds. And the Cotswold Hills these days has become more and more popular as more and more travellers want to see a little bit more of the English countryside, having probably got to know London quite well, really.
And when you take people to, let's talk about the Cotswolds, it has become more popular. And there is a feeling that if we're not careful, the Cotswold villages and the Cotswold towns are going to become victims of over-tourism. And when you get there with your car and your tourists, there's nowhere to park. You can't find a cup of coffee and sit for 2 hours and talk about a Cotswold life. Have you found that, or do you know the places to go to, so to speak, to avoid that?
Yeah, that can be a problem, but the thing is just knowing the best times to visit these places and the best days, of course, as well. And of course, the great thing about tours by locals is that you can work with the travellers to sort of work up an itinerary which is going to work for them and work for you, so that you can find the right time to visit these places where the crowds and miss the crowds. And indeed, there's always these little nooks and crannies in places where they're totally new to most tourists, and indeed are hidden away from the normal tourist tracks, and yet still give the traveller a really good, interesting experience and an insight into what Cotswold life is like in these villages, really. So I've done the advantage of knowing the Cotswolds pretty well, because I was born and brought up in Birmingham, so my parents used to take me to the Cotswolds when I was a kid, virtually every weekend. So I got to know them really well. So that helps as well, just knowing all the smaller villages where the tourists don't tend to go to.
And if you are taking people on a walking tour of London, is presumably that there's a restriction on the area that one can cover. Do you specialise, like, you know, in the city or the West End or you know, Westminster?
I try and do a bit of both, actually, Graham. I run the more traditional tours to the royal palaces, you know, the traditional sites like the Tower of London, the Houses of Parliament. But I also try and run a range of tours to sort of the lesser known parts of London. The City of London's a really good example there that you've raised, because, you know, in amongst all these huge skyscrapers, these sort of steel and glass edifices, there's lots of wonderful history and lots of wonderful places to discover. There's Victorian pubs and markets. There's a lot of Roman history underneath some of these major buildings. The Bloomberg building, for instance. There's a Roman temple. There's a Roman amphitheatre underneath the Guildhall, and indeed there's even a part of the Roman basilica underneath the hairdressers in a Victorian market. So there's so much to discover if you know where it is, and those kinds of tours are more and more popular these days, because a lot of travellers, of course, know London, have been to London a couple of times, and want to discover a different side of the city. So I try and offer a range of different tours, and again, customise them to the people who are interested.
Excellent. One last question to each of you. I have a group of Americans, 6 Americans, and they only have half an hour to spend in your destination. What would you do with them in that half an hour? One thing only. Christina, what would you do?
Oh, we would do like a quick short walk through the palace, and 30 minutes is more than enough for them to fall in love with it and then come back for more than 30 minutes.
Excellent. Albert, we're in Palma, half an hour, 6 Americans. What are we doing?
No doubt, the cathedral.
Excellent. Right, Nigel.
Well, I'm gonna cheat and go back to the City of London. I'll take them to Leadenhall Market and the Guildhall and see the Roman amphitheatre.
You can do that in 30 minutes.
You can do that in 30 minutes. Yeah.
Good. Gloria, down a pint of port, is it?
I see you like food, Graham. I think I would take them to Saint-Germain Monastery, and the church. In 15 minutes or 20 minutes we can go through it. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site. And then just across the street is the most famous pastries, egg custard. And I can skip the line as a guide. So this is one of the advantages of having a guide with you, and take away some of those fantastic pastéis de Belém, pastries of Belém, that the nuns offered the recipe to that specific pastry shop from 1837 after they had been expelled from the convent. So seems like a good thing to do.
Good.
And
Excellent. Right, well, thank you very much. One last question for Lydia. Your tours by local would be of Gustav Klimt, would it?
Yeah, I thought this would be the best background, the European contingent.
Excellent, excellent. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very, very much for your time. I'm sure that next time I'm in your area, I will be calling on for a tour by a local. So thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Thank you.
my pleasure.
Bye.